for a brown bag lunch. I'm very happy to see faces smiling, some faces. Masks are optional. My name is Michelle. If you didn't meet me last season, I just started at the Saratoga Room in April. Couple of housekeeping, if you would please turn off your cell phones or turn them sound down, mute, whatever you can do. Give Charlie a great presentation. Housekeeping also, notice the exit signs if there were ever an emergency, doors in back, left, right. And next month, we are bringing back our coffee and full house. So hopefully you'll be back next month. And here's Karen to introduce our speaker.
Fabulous. Thanks, Michelle. All right, welcome back. Can you believe this is the beginning of the fall season? How did that happen? Where did summer go? Say that every year, never fails. So welcome, as Michelle said, thank you so much to the Saratoga Springs Public Library. This is a wonderful partnership program between the Visitor Center and the library. We're so fortunate to be able to bring this to you, and we're even more excited to be able to be bringing it to you in person without masks, etc. And as Michelle said, next month we're actually going to bring back the coffee. Woohoo! So stay tuned for that. As I said, I'm Karen Barigny. I'm the director of the Visitor Center. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm not going to do a lot of talking. This is a program that you're here to listen to somebody else and not me. So let's get to the introduction. Great speaker today. Many of you know the very popular Charlie Kuenzel. He's here today to talk to you about Saratoga history using the images from the Bolster collection. Please give him a warm welcome.
Well, looking at the clock, I can say good afternoon to you. So, as Karen said, my name is Charlie Kuenzel, and let's see if this works. Yeah, there we go. Always a good sign at the beginning of a talk. We're going to be using the Bolster collection. We've done this a couple times in the past. We've gotten some pretty good feedback on it, so I thought I would try this again. I presently serve as president of the History Museum, and just in case you didn't know this, the Bolster collection is one of the things that we have. It's 325,000 photographic images. To be quite honest with you, when you take a look at that monstrous number of 325,000, you think, oh my God, we got 325,000 pictures of buildings and stuff like that. And no, there's an awful lot of wedding pictures, which are great. George took a lot of those. High school graduation, you name it. So when you disaggregate that, all of a sudden what you find is, and we did this art, we kind of scanned in about 17,000 that are mostly buildings, streets, stuff like that. Now, this is a tough thing for me, and I'm not trying to push it off or anything, but I just think you should know this. When you're trying to put together a collection like this, I try to do a smattering of topics, and I also try to do a few pictures that I know most of you have probably seen. And we'll show the diversity. We have a very diverse collection. But I know there's got to be a few in here that will, I think, really surprise you, because there's some really, really good ones that we've uncovered. So let's take a look first at this. If you had the pleasure to see George, this picture was taken by Mike Noonan, who worked with George. But if you ever stopped in, when I was a younger person, I would a lot of times stop in on my way home. Even when I was in high school, I'd drop into his studio on File Street. And most of the time I would find him doing something like this. This is him colorizing one of the photos. And he did it most of the time with Q-tips. The other thing that I always loved, if any of you, some of you must have gone in to see him, he always had the apple, and he had a bottle of Saratoga Vichy. So when I get in there, I always knew that if we talked long enough, he'd sit down and the apple would start to be chewed on, and he'd break the seal on the Vichy, and it was Saratoga. What can I tell you? It's great stuff. So let's start with an image that probably everybody has seen. This is the iconic picture of Sir William Johnson visiting the High Rock Spring. He's given credit as being the first European visitor to this site, probably the last 4 days in August 1771. He's being carried on a litter by some Mohawk tribe members, and the whole question becomes, why is he there? They released the location of this very revered spring, because the Mohawk were the indigenous tribe in this area. And they pretty much gave him the okay to take a look at it. And it was because of his health was failing. And the way the story always goes, I think it's a good way to start with, is that he was carried there, came from approximately the Johnstown area. But he's carried there, and after 4 days of drinking it and washing out his wounds, he walks most of the way home. He becomes the first president of the Chamber of Commerce. So, you know, he puts quill to parchment, and all of a sudden there's all kinds of letters going out about this miraculous spring. We do find that he does get sick again, but that's, you know, immaterial. So it's not long lasting, but it's enough to get the word out, and all of a sudden people want to come here. That's what's going to start to do it. You probably know the name Saratoga is a Mohawk term, Saratoga. So this was a protected area, and then once it was opened up, it was still slow to develop for a while. All the contiguous municipalities around us were already ahead of us. They were all way ahead of us. So we're a late comer to the party, but we learned how to party pretty quick. So I tell you, this is the picture that I used for the presentation today in terms of our advertisement. This one is referred to in the collection, really Saratoga, approximately 1829. In this particular picture, let me see if I can get up here and do this. I know everybody will be mad at me for the video and stuff, but this is the Congress Hall. And across the street would have been the original tavern and boarding house that Wanda and Gideon started. A little bit of artistic interpretation, but this is inferred to be South Broadway. So, and where was this going? Well, Broadway didn't go very far in that direction. They had only purchased the land a short distance up and cleared it and made a road. So this was going to Bolster spot. So Bolster was our rival. And Jim Richmond is here. Jim and I did 3 debates years ago on the formation of Saratoga and Boston and all that kind of good stuff. So we had a lot of fun doing that.
And you won every time.
And I won every time. Don't you love bringing a gun to a knife fight? I'll tell you, you know. This picture, actually, one of the reasons I put this one in is because when we researched, this is High Rock. And again, there's interpretations of this, but High Rock is going to be one of the early spots in which development is going to happen. And first of all, look at the size of the High Rock cone. Ay, ay, ay. I know, I mean, we've got all kinds of stuff that the cone was cut and everything else. And it was a little higher than the one that's there right now, but still, this looks like something that's, you know, from Mars or Moon or something like that. The other thing is 3 stories in this building up here. I don't know. The one thing, see, Jim was beating the heck out of me in this debate in the beginning part, because we were uncovering things like in people's diary, they said, they would much rather go to the accommodations of Boston Spa because they were real hotels, real accommodations. The people that stayed here to drink our waters, a lot of them said they had to sleep in hammocks because the rattlesnakes were so prevalent. So if you were up off the ground, the chances are something didn't come in and share the pillow and the blanket with you. So this kind of points out, let me just say this really quick. We're going to actually have 2 villages start. We're going to have an upper and a lower village. And this is going to be the upper. The lower is going to form around Congress Spring. This is a picture, probably 1913. This one is High Rock Spring. And this is the way it kind of looks today. There's been some modifications. DPW changed this a few years ago. This is out right now. And there's a fence with 2 gates in it that allows access to the area. When we re-drilled it in 2015, the idea was to try to bring it back to its grandeur. We've got a spring now to the outside of it. But the other thing about this picture that I really like is the fact it shows you what it looked like years ago, how open it was. When I was a kid, we used to play, they used to have all kinds of pickup games down here. I mean, it was wide open. Now we've got, I just came from a group, I had taken them down to the 9/11 memorial and all the different trees and everything. It's a beautiful park, but it has changed. And that's one of the reasons we do this kind of a presentation. The Old Red, it's down near Bardino's. Right now, this whole section is very much under construction. If you follow the news from Saratoga. This will be closed until about November 11th, I guess it is. But this spring is still in operation. This is a topical spring. It's used mostly for eyes and skin inflammation. And this is where the spring is today. But most important, look behind it. That's a bathhouse. A lot of people don't realize that the old Red had a really great bathhouse. And I had the pleasure of going through the sign-in book for the spring, and I can't remember the exact years that I spent most of the time on. It was amazing where people came from. Because all the hotel registers and all the bathhouses, if you went in to take a bath or whatever, they'd ask you to sign in where you're from and who you're traveling with, things like that. And people from South America, people from all over Europe, and stuff like they're coming from Montana. I mean, whew, really something. The other thing is, a lot of times we have to look in the distance or look at how things are going right now. Look at the high rises we're starting to put in. The city's starting to get big. Jim and I agreed when we did our debate that probably July 1st, 1832 was very pivotal because that's when the first rail line came into Saratoga. And once the rail line came here, all of a sudden people had quick, reliable transportation. And it was the number one listed place to come because it was so easy to get here. Prior to that, to come off the steamships in Albany and to go from Albany to Saratoga by stagecoach took 8 hours, 30 miles, 8 hours. And I always say you may be traveling north and south, but the body parts go east and west. So. I do not have an exact date on that. There was nothing listed in it, the exact date. I apologize for that. It's just, we've got some gaping holes. And the one thing that could probably be done if I had time, and I'll have to put this on the list, is to kind of go back and try to figure out Methodist Church, and to start backtracking with.
I was wondering if that was the bell tower on City Hall.
If it was, you're talking 1871, but
I'm not,
yeah.
Church.
So, and that would have been the church, probably not Methodist, but the one that burned down, Presbyterian, yes, that was down on Broadway. This one is an iconic picture. This is circa 1877. And the reason I know this is because the High Rock was redone. And this is the High Rock Spring right here. The Eagle comes in 1876, and the reason is it's the national centennial of Declaration of Independence. And everybody in town was dressing up and doing all these new things and stuff like that. Yeah, the one thing that I wanted more in this is to show you the Seltzer Spring that's on the left. I don't know if you've ever seen this one. The Seltzer was right up against the fault. This would be approximately where the 9/11 memorial is today. And the interesting thing is the Seltzer Spring was bottled heavily, and it came out of Baden-Baden, Germany. And it was marketed in the United States, and everybody knew the taste of it. When this was finally tapped and consumed, people said it tastes exactly like the seltzer. So as a result, they just tagged the name on it. And it lasted for quite a while, but then it went away. One of the things it was very good for, because it's one of the few that could be used as a mixture with alcohol. The mineral content was low enough. When mineral content's high, especially with iron content, magnesium will do it too. If you put it with alcohol, you'll get a precipitate that'll form, which looks really bad. Let's say you've got something with gin or vodka or maybe even tequila, for example. And let's say we put things together and you put a mixer in like this. If it's highly mineralized, you're going to get flocculation, they call it, which is the formation of small mineral deposits that all drop out. The drink turns red and doesn't look real good, So finding a mixer was hard. So this one was there for a while, anyhow. So. Star Spring, this is, again, High Rock area. It's going down toward the mill, but it doesn't get to the mill. Everybody know where the mill is down? Down just past High Rock. Mill is going to have the Empire. The Star is going to be before that. Star is bottled heavily, and it's an afternoon and evening spring. It's usually not one of the morning ones. Congress is morning, High Rock's kind of morning, but Congress is the number one morning spring. But the thing that always amazes me, they simply put the star up there, and everybody kind of knows that's the Star Spring. The other thing is, I always look at the attire on the people, how they're dressed, and how they come just to take the waters. It's kind of a formal type thing, really kind of interesting. Bathhouse. You read the sign, right? Hamilton, Gideon Putnam. This is on the site of approximately where the carousel is. This curve right here is Spring Street. And of course, originally Spring Street was called Bath Street because of this bathhouse. And they tapped into the Hamilton Spring, which is one that Gideon found. And you see, you can understand, Gideon and DeWanda, they show up and they're hardworking and they're good entrepreneurs. And what they're looking for is the total package. They want people to come to their hotel, but then what are they going to do? Well, they want to have them be able to drink water. They want them to take baths. They want a lot of different things to happen. So he develops this. There were other bathhouses at this point in Saratoga. The first bathhouse was down at the High Rock. It was called the Barrel Spring. And that barrel spring was simply a wooden barrel with both ends taken out. They put it over the top of the spring. It filled up with water. You got to take your clothes off. You jumped in. You took an egg timer, flipped it over. And when the sand got through, it yanked you out. Now, I've never been able to figure out whether or not they dumped it. That was the problem that I've always had. I put this one in. This is Circular Street. Okay, here's Circular. Spring Street is going to come up right here. This is Skidmore Hall. So Charles Ferdinand Dowd has already built this and he's using it as a school and everything else. The thing in this picture that I wanted was this. Dr. Strong's sanatorium. I don't know if you've ever researched Dr. Strong's place, but it was a very full-blown total spa experience. The advertisements are amazing for this. And this is going to operate in the 1890s up until the beginning part of the 1900s. Okay, there were a lot of them. Okay, but here's the deal. It's because of this that we're going to protect the springs. There's a lawsuit that Henry Hathorne, again, you got to think where you are. Spring Street is cutting across here, and you're going to go down the Spring Street Hill over here. And Henry Hathorne owns the Hathorne Spring, and what he does is initiate a lawsuit because these guys are pumping so much water out of the aquifers, it's affecting the flow rate on the Hathorne Spring at the bottom of the hill. Believe it or not, it's the first time, 1907, it's the first time litigation is brought where the overuse of one resource or abuse, however you want to measure it, can be directly tied to the loss of services someplace else. And you think, yeah, it'd take that long to come up with that one? But it took that long. Then that helps with the Anti-Pumping Act of 1908 that's passed in the state. We go from 203 springs down to 21. And that's the protection process. That's going to build eventually the state park and all the other stuff. But Dr. Strong's sanatorium, not there anymore, but I think that's one that we at least should know something about. Columbia Spring. Congress Park, it's closer to Broadway. And of course, we're operating now, the city has done a great job with the covers. The covers are all 3/4. From an architectural point of view, you can maintain the same architectural theme, but you can make this 3/4 the size, reduce your costs, etc. But this is the Columbia Spring. This is believed to be, from all the research we did, the summer of 1860. Most of the people in this picture are Southern visitors. So it's an antebellum picture. And basically what you've got is the last time many of these Southern visitors are going to come to Saratoga. Because with the war breaking out in the spring of 61, and then, of course, the decimation of the South and their economy, it's all new northern money and stuff that's going to kind of ride Saratoga. So the Columbia. And again, I take a look. I could spend a lot of time sitting looking at the clothing and everything else. I can't imagine hot days. We have a hot summer, right? Can you imagine? It's a new game called Pass Out, I guess. I don't know. This one is Hall Springs. Now, the reason I put this in is I find there's a lot of people that they go, oh yeah, the Hall Springs. And then they don't take it from the context. This was for drinking water. This wasn't for parties. This wasn't for weddings. And these three kiosks, whatever we call them here, are going to dispense the waters that are going to be bottled next door to Louisa Hathorne and Geyser. State seal will get put in there at some point, but that's pure water. But overall, people would come in, there would be attendants behind those areas that would bring it to you. It was on draft, so they would bring it to you, let you drink it. They tell you the efficacy and the formation, the mineral content, all that kind of stuff. That opens 1935. It's just to promote water. So what have we done? We've lost that whole thing with drink halls, but we're using the spaces now for the parties and everything else. Modification, the middle kiosk is gone, gives you a better dance floor and stuff, better parties lately there. And then these can be used by the caterers, so you guys know all this stuff. This is another drink hall. You recognize where this is? Yep, corner of Putnam and Spring. Parking garage is there now. Now the Hathorn drink hall was there originally, elegant, truly elegant. Then the state runs this one later. By the time we get to about 1941, and then eventually this is shut down. And the Hathorn Spring, which is located today right here, that's found at the base of the ballroom, and I'll show you another picture in a few minutes of that. When they're setting the foundation stone for this, they uncovered that there's a spring that's coming up. That one is a depth of 1,097 feet, so it's the deepest spring we have in the city. And that water was dispensed out the back door here. Then, if you were here in the 50s and 60s, it was here, and then once the parking garage came, it went across the street. The nice thing about that spring, that I think from a purely historical, chemical, and geologic point of view, is probably the only spring in the city limits that's exactly like it was in the 1880s. And it's because all they did was add one pipe. They didn't re-drill it. Congress is on re-drilling 9, stuff like that. High Rock, I take credit for goofing that one. And that's not the same water that we had back in the 1800s. So, but drink halls were big. And here's one of our favorite drink halls, okay? This is the visitor center, and stop in sometime and talk to the people, the volunteers at the visitor center. They'll tell you the story. This building originally was a trolley station, then it becomes a drink hall. And in the 1940s and 50s, when drink halls were still around, water was being dispensed, that's what it was for. And sometimes, if you take the time to look at some of the display cabinets at the visitor center, you'll notice there's 2 pictures, little different views, some with people, some without. But it kind of gives you an indication that you can look at the picture and then you can look at the building and see how it's transformed. A lot of the elements are still the same, but the use changed, and it changed to be a visitor center. I love this one only for the words on the bottom. Okay, if this wasn't here, if you look hard enough at these structures, you would say Franklin Square, right? Look what it says on the bottom. It says Railroad Terminus and Marvin Square. Now, the Marvin brothers were very instrumental in the United States Hotel. They were legislators. They were pretty good in the early days of Saratoga. And of course, the United States is going to burn in June of 1865. So there's a big gap of like, 7 years that hotel isn't even around. But they're instrumental before that. A couple different ways they're instrumental. Number one, they build big palatial houses here because they have the money. And this ends up being the first upscale neighborhood in Saratoga. Okay, it's going to be way ahead of North Broadway, Union Avenue, stuff like that. But here's the deal. They bought almost all the land beyond that to the west. They carved it up, they had it surveyed, they made 50-foot frontages. They knew there was blue-collar workers that had to be hired in order to do as artisans to do the work on all the construction. 1871 is the most phenomenal year in construction in Saratoga history. Take a look on Broadway. How many spots are listed as they were formed or built in 1871? A lot of people going, including Campfield Casino additions are done. So he's saying, if you want to buy a piece of land and build a house, you can. It's within your reach as a blue-collar worker, which is big to these people. So what do they call this square? Marvin Square. It's to honor the Marvin brothers. Marvin brothers don't like that. There's pushback. And eventually the Marvin brothers said, we got to pick a real American hero. Pick one like Ben Franklin, And all of a sudden today, we've lost the story, but it's Franklin Street. And of course, this would be Division Street right here, and this cross right here would be Railroad Place. So we'd have spot coffee and all that kind of stuff there. But it's kind of interesting how that worked. And again, Bush Railroad come in 1832. When the rail line came in, it always came in on this track, and then they took a hard right the first year and came down. And believe it or not, for 1 year, the train stopped at the intersection of Division and Broadway. And then they moved it back and had it stop up there, and then eventually we'll see, we're going to build all kinds of D&H stations and stuff like that. But again, artist's conception on what the rail line looked like and all that kind of area. So the rail depot at Saratoga. And then here it is by the time we get to 1888, this is the D&H. And not only can you see the grandeur of the building, the size of the building, I always like this. Look at the horse-drawn carriages that are here. This property backs up to a couple of the big hotels. So all of your visitors for the summer are coming in, and they are loaded down with huge amounts of luggage. So they need porters to help them get their stuff there. Most Southern women, again, antebellum period, most Southern women come to Saratoga brought between 40 and 70 dresses.
Wow.
They had to change their clothes a lot. And the other thing which I tracked, it took a while, but they finally found this. There is a huge increase in the number of dressmakers in Saratoga between like 1845 and like 1858. All of a sudden, it like triples. So not only are they bringing a lot, but then they're having it fabricated. Because if you don't have department stores, that's going to be A.T. Stewart out of Philadelphia that's going to revolutionize department stores and stuff like that, where you can try things on and things are actually made and all that kind of good stuff. We'll get into another topic on that. But just the amount of effort it took, not only to get here, but then get your luggage to the hotel at the meeting. So this is hanging on the wall in the orientation room at the Canfield Casino. We're very proud of this. This is the original Putnam Tavern and Boarding House sign that was originally painted by DeWanda Putnam. And you kind of look at that, and if you're a normal person, you look at it and go, what the heck is that? And I have to scratch my head a little bit, okay? Gideon decides he's going to come up with a plan to make this hotel special. So what's he do? Whoa, he breaks the clicker. Oh no, that was Charlie Kuenzel, and that was 2022. Well, we'll see. An engineering degree or something like that. But in the meantime, what we've got is, he says, you know, my family was out of Connecticut, and there was a really great story in the old days about a wolf that was terrorizing all of the yards and barns and farms and everything else. He was eating a lot of livestock and everything else. And his uncle decided he would put an end to it, so he tracked the wolf. And prior to that, they tried, they could never find the wolf. Eventually, he found the wolf, he tracked it back to its den. The way the story goes is he took 2 loaded pistols. He had ropes tied around his legs, that's what they're trying to do up here. And he shimmies his way down into the tunnel where the wolf is. He shoots the wolf and then grabs the wolf by the ears and pulls it out. How's he pull it out? Somebody's pulling his legs on the other end of the rope. And he comes out, he's the hero, and they're talking about this. So he says, okay, I'm going to capitalize on this. I'm going to make sure that everybody knows that I'm part of this tavern and boarding house family. I'm part of the fact that one of my ancestors killed the wolf. I don't know. Maybe we need a course in advertising or something like that. So let's see if we can advance things this way. Okay, we've got the Pavilion Hotel. I don't know if you're aware of this. Here's a Pavilion Hotel in Saratoga right now. This is the original one. Okay, we know where it was. This is on the corner of Broadway and Lake Avenue. Broadway, Lake, City Hall is going to take its place. It's the northeast corner, so it's right where the City Hall is today. But There was a lot of structure. This is a Covent Garden that was built down here, patterned after the one in London. There was a lot of different things that were there, and then they were all wiped out, and then eventually more construction like we have today kind of starts to come in. So, First Pavilion Hotel, if anybody ever asked you, you might win, a Coke or something at the bar someday. Who knows? Okay, I went too fast. Okay, this is one of our three big. This is Congress Hall. So this is Broadway, and this is the side street of Spring Street. Not the biggest hotel that we had, but a good size. It sat on the property that today we have the Spirit of Life, etc. When it was built, it was kind of landlocked. It was the brainchild of DeWanda and Gideon Putnam. Gideon is going to fall from scaffolding on this end right here in 1811, and he lingers until December 1st, 1812, with internal injuries and finally dies. But it's from the construction project. And as a result, it was so early and so landlocked, they were missing an integral part of everything, which was a ballroom. So let's talk ballrooms. This is a look up Spring Street. Okay. And here's what they built for the ballroom. He bought that piece of property, he built that structure, it's still there today, it's been reconfigured in the last few years in condominiums. But the parking garage is here, from here in. And here's the hotel. Now look at the road, pretty muddy. And one of the things that he wanted to do, of course, was now he's got a ballroom, he wants to have people go to these balls. But what's the style for women of the day? It's silk slippers and long dresses. So as a result, with muddy conditions, it's not going to fly very well. So what he proposes to the city council is this bridge. He has the bridge fabricated ahead of time down in Troy, all the great ironworks after the American Civil War were still up and running there. So he has it fabricated, has it shipped to Saratoga. He's already applied to the city council, and they keep deferring it, one council meeting after another, month after month after month. He gets kind of mad at that, and eventually what he does is one night the sun goes down, the bridge goes up, the sun comes up, and everybody goes, ah, there's a bridge. And I guess the way the analysis is, city council basically looks at it and says, oh, well, I guess we're going to approve it. But this was called the Bridge of Smiles, and what this did was allow people to move quick access over. If you look at the side of the building today, this would be the art center today. If you look across, if you really look with a discerning eye, you can see in the brickwork the archways where they would have gone in and out. It's still there. Just have to kind of look for it. But again, little known things. Notice the gas lighting. We had gas for quite a long time and then electrified later, but we don't pave until into the 1900s. I mean, there's a million different aspects to this. So, okay, this is the iconic Grand Union. You can tell by the center spot right here. Grand Union by 1872, A.T. Stewart owns it. He's going to modify it. It's going to have 978 rooms, 26 cottages. It's going to be covering 7 acres of property. It has 500 rocking chairs on the front porch. They put out the bid, they need carpeting in the essence of 3.5 acres, 3.5 acres. Like I always say, I'm kind of a 9 by 12 guy, you know what I mean? 3 acres. I got the architecturals and I went through them and I was amazed at what they were bidding. 1.5 acres of marble countertops. 1.5 acres of countertops. So, I mean, this thing is a behemoth, and it's going to be for a while the biggest in the world. But that's going to be where the ACO building is today. So we've got Washington Street here. We've got Broadway, and then it goes all the way down to Congress, and it goes all the way back to Federal. So it's a big one. It's a big one, to say the least.
Joe?
Yeah.
Is that where Starbucks is now? They're filled into the.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and of course, you can see this is kind of late because of the automobiles. So a lot of other properties have already been kind of established. This is going to be torn down by 1953. That's the other misconception a lot of people have. They all say, oh, they all burned down. No, they didn't. They burned at different times, but at the end, they almost all got torn down because it was Darwinian economics. They're too big. We had, there's an estimate of 26,000 hotel rooms. Now, I don't know. I've tried to work the math on all that. I think it was less than 26,000. You know how many we have in the county right now? 4,000. And what do people tell me all the time? I don't like Saratoga because there's too many hotels. I go, okay. Or the other one is, I don't like what they're building because they're too tall. And you know, the old ones were a story higher, you know, so it is what it is. So. Okay, when you're in the Grand Union Hotel, you've got to have the best of everything because you got the best people in the country that are going to stay there. Victor Herbert, he's the music director. Victor Herbert's the music director at the Grand Union Hotel. Now, before you become very impressed with that, it's a few steps down as you go north, and you're going to hit the United States Hotel, and John Philip Sousa is going to be marching his way through that place. So we've got all kinds of the best music, and Saratoga Room's got this. I mean, I was going to do a whole section on the music here, and so yeah, we got sheet music that was written specifically for the Saratoga hotels, and Victor Herbert did a tremendous amount with that. But you know, what do we need? We're still, well, isn't this amazing? Back in the day, what was going on? Really neat stuff. 3 concerts a day, by the way, too. Oh yes, United States Hotel. Okay. Millionaires Row. I don't know if anybody's ever shown you this. This porch was called Millionaires Row. Access to it from the internal areas. There was no real easy way to get up there. And it was generally assumed that if you had assets of over $1 million, you'd be allowed to sit there. The Saratoga Compact was designed there in 1874 with the price fixing of the railroad systems, where they all got together and said, we will all set one price for moving a freight, paralyze the country, beginning of the antitrust acts come in and all that kind of stuff to try to break it up. But in order to build this, they need this extra space. They're going to move Division Street. They're literally going to move Division Street. All the side streets in Saratoga are 66 feet wide. Broadway's 120, but all the sides were designed by the Putnams at 66 feet. What they did was they took the street up and moved it north. What you've got to do is go down on Broadway sometime and stand where Division Street is and look up Division. And what you find is, yeah, it goes up nice and straight, and then it takes a little dog leg to the left and then over. It's got to connect. It wasn't designed or surveyed incorrectly. It got moved. They just picked it up and moved it over. They kind of did that stuff every once in a while. This is a period of time, as you can see, we've got cars starting to come in, but we still got horse-drawn carriages. So that's always a neat picture too. One of my favorites, the Grand Central. This is on the side of the Visitor Center. Grand Central made the 4th of the big hotels. It was a little bit smaller than the ones we've looked at so far, but it was very, very nice. Only could operate for 3 summers. It was started in June of 1872, ran 73 and 74, burned on October 1st, 1874. The fire started and moved through this so fast because it was native white pine framed, etc. It almost took out the Grand Union across the street. That was the biggest concern. But that was what makes, I wrote a couple articles. I think the best summer of Old Saratoga was the summer of 1874. You had the 4 biggest hotels. Everything was clicking. It's a phenomenal thing. It's that perfect storm, so to speak, where everything just fit. But that's the last year that we had 4. After that, we just had the big 3 that we got a little while ago. But they did a poor job with the insurance, and they couldn't recoup their loss and they ended up never rebuilding. This was demoed, and of course, by 1915, the trolley station is going to go there and called Visitor Center today. Okay, music in the park. Big tradition. In fact, the concert series that was Discover and the Visitor Center runs is a big deal for July and August. This was the original bandstand. It was wooden. It was in the park. Kind of gives you an indication of how music has been a big part in the park for years. Most of the time, music would start in the park at 7 a.m. because people would be exiting the hotels to drink water. It was generally, kind of recommended that you would drink 1 or 2 glasses before breakfast. So starting at 7 o'clock, there was always music. And then there were afternoon concerts and of course night concerts too. But we've had a long tradition of music in the park. This one, very few people remember this one. Over to the left here is the original bandstand, which of course we all know was replaced with the World War I memorial that's there now. It's stone. Across from this, as you get closer to Broadway and the condominiums there, Parkview, that was a bandstand built inside of the hill. And again, that supplied a smaller group, sometimes out of Troy, with different musical groups, and they would provide music at different times. The other thing is, notice no benches. Look at the chairs. It was all just hundreds and hundreds of chairs in the park. Advertisement. One of the things that is, I think, kind of neat. We've got 17,000 of these scanned and digitized, but some of them are advertisements. Excelsior Union Springs. Maybe you haven't heard of these. These were part of the 10 Springs. They were in the 10 Springs Woods. The 10 Springs Woods was an area that goes from East Avenue at the base of these behind Quality Hardware and Excelsior Beverage and runs all the way down. They call it Spring Run today. And there was 10 different mineral springs down. And there were a couple of bathhouses, and the white sulfur was down there and a few others. But it just shows you how everybody was pitching to try to sell and get their product out there and everything else. And so, all good stuff. This picture we added to the collection, I think it was 6 years ago. We found this online. Jim and I were talking about how, as two historians, we kind of fall into things every once in a while. And you go, where the heck did this picture come from? Who had it? So it wasn't part of the Bolster collection originally. This is the side view of the Canfield Casino. And the reason we went after this, and it wasn't real cheap, but it wasn't expensive either. But the reason we went after it was there's a bunch of elements here. Number one, here's the Morrissey Fountain. Okay, that's being reconstructed right now after the vandalism that happened almost 2 months ago. We always heard, and maybe you have as tour guides and other people, you probably read the stories about how when casino gambling was going on inside the building, a red ball was placed at the top of the fountain. And I always kind of disputed that because I looked at it from a water pressure point of view, and before mechanical pressure and just gravity feed, I couldn't see how that could work. We argued that back and forth until we got this picture, and we find there was this kind of basket, a big basket up there that allowed the ball to spin inside the basket. So it's true. The other thing is, it's hard from where you're sitting to see the doorway that's on there. That's the Mary Lou door. You know, when she would have all of her parties, she always entered an exit to the Mary Lou door. And above it, there's a sign that says restaurant. This is the small restaurant that they had before the ballroom was put on by Canfield. So you just pick things up in these pictures. It's amazing in terms of what's going on. Now here's the other one. May 1st, 1878, we're going to have John Morrissey pass away on the second floor of the Adelphi Hotel. And when he passes away, he's got two silent partners, Spencer and Reed, out of Albany, and they're not real good, but they're going to run the business. Up in these windows, I don't know if you can see it, up here, the second floor, there's two people in the window, Spencer and Reed. So good find for us.
What about, isn't that the sign that had all the stained glass windows on it?
Yes, stained glass is going to come as a result of Canfield. By the time Canfield gets there in 1894, he's going to bump out. He's going to make some alcoves down. He's going to build. You know, there's significant modification. Yeah.
John, what was that building on the left side?
Oh, okay, let me see if we can go backwards here.
It's not there.
Um, in the park, and I've got some pictures coming up. You gotta remember, Putnam Street came through the park. So the Canfield Casino always had on a corner lot. So on that stretch that we now have the carousel and everything else, there was a lot of businesses, believe it or not, there were a lot of livery stables just across the street and stuff. So it was different uses in different buildings down through there. But it was kind of genius that Morrissey picked that because I know I've got a picture coming up of this. Hold on, maybe the next one will show it. That's just his office, which is now our orientation room on the first floor. But take a look, this one helped, and the one next will help. This is East Congress Street right here that runs through the park. This is the side street. This is the extension of Putnam Street. I joke too much, but he picked the corner a lot. Why? Because the carriages would come straight through East Congress. They would also come through the side, and then they would go straight up the hill, which was open at that time. It was open when I was a kid. It would go all the way to the track. So people in their carriages had to go by there. And it was a perfect, it's location. I always joke that if it was available today, it'd probably be Stewart's on it. But it's all about where you are. And here's another view of the same thing. Morrissey Fountain. And the streets. Notice how the walkways have changed drastically. Obviously, all of that is very fluid, so that's not a big deal to change. Interior picture of the Canfield Casino. I worked there 5 or 6 days a week, so when I look at something like this, this shows the roulette tables on the perimeter, and then the faro tables over here that were big in the parlor. That parlor today looks almost exactly the same. The design, obviously we replaced the rug because we had to. This doesn't last like it used to. We get 135 years out of something. We expect a little bit more, but who knows? No, with that. But the gasoliers, I mean, just everything about it it's pretty unique. And city has done a wonderful job in source preservation in terms of maintaining that. I don't know if you ever knew we had an opera house. This was behind the Grand Union Hotel. If you were to go down Congress Street about where Wendy's is, and then you kind of a little bit more past Wendy's, you look directly across at the lot, that would have been the back part of the hotel. And the Leland Opera House was there. It opened, I think it was July 4th, 1865. And it was, the ribbon cutting was done by Ulysses S. Grant. Capacity on this varies. I think more realistic it was 3,000. So I think capacity is back inside is 5. But so it gives you an idea. It wasn't a small little thing. But think about what we had. I mean, we had the best music. We had opera. We had the best food. I mean, no wonder we're the #1 tourist destination in the United States in the time.
New York City, yes.
Yeah. More so today. I'd say. Lily Russell, Diamond Gem, I had put their picture in. They came to Saratoga quite a bit, and there was always rumors about their love affairs and stuff. I had done a presentation years ago on this, and I honestly don't think that they, I know for a fact, based on a lot of things, that was not true, but they got a lot of people talking and everything else, which was good for both of their careers. In fact, I picked this picture on purpose. Obviously, there's Lillian. This is Jesse Lowenson, and he was a gambler. He had a lot of different things. He did financier, etc. But he became Lillian's boyfriend. And then, ironically, his health failed. Diamond Jim let him borrow his estate in New Jersey for a summer so he could recuperate, and he ended up running away with Diamond Jim's girlfriend. So the two of them took off and left the two of these again. So we got all kinds of good stories. I think I did that one, 8 years ago or something like that. Picture of the area near Horse Haven. So this would be inferred to be Union Avenue. This is a picture of the 1847 New York State World, or, no, go to that. 1847 New York State Fair. If you get into trivia, a lot of times people say, when was the first year of racing? And a lot of times people say, oh, 1863. Well, that was with Morrison. But the first real racing we had was 1847. It was harness. And the reason we had it was there was a special dispensation. There was a law New York State had that said you could not do horse racing in the state of New York except at state fairs. So we were awarded the state fair in 1847. This whole thing was set up. They set up a track, which ends up going to be Horsehaven eventually. But in typical Saratoga fashion, state fair was supposed to open at the end of August. Starting in June, we had racing. And when we were challenged by that, we said, well, we're just doing time trials every day. So yeah, we got our money's worth out of that year. But then that poorly made track becomes Horsehaven. And if you follow what happens in 1863, the 4 days of racing with 8 horses that Morrissey, Hunter, Jerome, and Travers put together, yeah, it draws 15,000 people. But overall, it's not a good facility for people at all. It's got bad lines of sight. It's not good. So that's why the next year, after they see it's a good experiment, they're going to buy 125 acres across the street and build the track. They'll open for racing in 64. Excuse me. So let's see. Okay, if you're into the track, and I know some of you are, this is the old paddock back here. Today, if you go to the track, this is the paddock here, and this is now pari-mutuel windows, and the backside's got the racing secretary, horseman's credentials, all those offices if you're going and doing that. But I love this picture from the standpoint, it's the evolution of the track, but also look at the attire and how people dressed and everything else. It's just amazing. And I kind of always wondered if why did one of my ancestors sell straw hats? And this one, I don't know if you've ever seen this one. Love this picture. Betting shed. Before pari-mutuel wagering comes in and computers are advanced and everything else, you made all your bets at Saratoga and any track with bookies. Kavanaugh Special would come up the day before opening day at the track. Kavanaugh brought 100 bookies with him. They would work out of there. And if you were sitting in the stands and you wanted to make a bet on the next race, you went down and found somebody that would give you good odds. And then you dealt with them directly. And the other thing is, look at the apron. Grass. There's no blacktop. I mean, nowadays everything is blacktop. And then look at the evolution. You'll see this in the next picture. Look how primitive the track looks in the early days. The size of the grandstands, also the fencing. Nowadays the inside rails are so different. These are all modified today. You probably know a lot about the track with this. It's layers and layers that help increase drainage. None of that was done. It was just kind of put together like this. But it shows you it's a simpler time, it's a different time, and how the track has evolved. There's not even an 1863 club here yet. So. I love this one too. This one shows you how the evolution of the clubhouse comes. And again, just the whole structure of things, how it was very much modified. The other thing, the stewards. If you go to the track, you know what the stewards' towers look like and how all those have been modified. They have race officials today and cameras everywhere, but not back then. One of my favorites, the building of the Bachelor Mansion. Stick frame, balloon frame, okay? So if you're into framing, you know what I mean? There's a bunch of aspects to this. I mean, number one, when you're balloon framing like this, you can't break up your run on your lumber, so you've got to have some very long runs. And the idea that sawmills could do that back in 1870 is kind of amazing. And just the whole structure, to think that today, when we go by the Bachelor Mansion, that's what the bones look like underneath. The other thing is, it's very strongly suggested that these two men up here, the one on the left is George Sherman, Bachelor himself. So he's overseeing the construction of it. So, and of course, you probably all know that the Bachelor Mansion is the first house ever to be patented in the United States. Can't build another one. And there's so many different aspects to the house. It's a fun one to do a talk on or to study in detail. I love this. Fifth Avenue,
Oh, man.
East Avenue. Yeah, 1939. Now, behind this row of trees, if you think about it and everything else, behind this row of trees, that's the Oklahoma tract. Oklahoma was put together in 1901 by W.C. Whitney and Wilson Shute. All that was put together to save racing at Saratoga and get it back on track, etc. But that's all that's there. And look at the rest. Isn't it amazing? Yeah. It blows me away. When I found this one, I was like, wow. And if you're an old-time Saratoga person, you know, they call this the Speedway. It's rumored that if you had a pretty good car in high school, it used to kind of, well, but anyhow, you kind of get some of that feel. But East Avenue, Fifth Avenue, 1939, right? Not that long ago. So, at least in my eyes. City Hall, constructed 1871. Try this, okay? It's an old trick in astronomy. Take your two fingers and hold it up and see if you can get the gap between the base and the roof line that's here. Then take it and superimpose it up there. You do that in the sky at night with different parallax. What do you think? How big is the tower? Too big. It's half the size of the building.
Yeah.
So by the 1930s, they're going to take the bell tower down for two reasons. Well, maybe three. There's this gigantic bell up here, and it rings. But as it swings, its inertia is so much that it's going to start degradation on the supports group in there. And then the other thing is, without question, the insurance companies don't like these. They've been built like this. This is kind of a cookie cutter across the country. And they're getting hit by lightning, and they're coming down on top. So the top comes down. And the next time you're on Broadway, you're in front of the building, stand right here and take a look at how big the building is. And then picture, yeah, it was twice as big before. Now, there have been some talk, I've talked to a few contractors about the possibility to attempt to redo this with new fabrics and put cell phones and towers and all that kind of stuff in there, electronic bells, et cetera, and kind of redo the configuration because we're past now. But nothing has moved on that, and we probably never will. But just kind of interesting of what it used to look like and why it was changed and modified. Visitor center. Okay, a couple things here. Obviously, this is the visitor center, trolley station, drink hall. Look at the size of the Gradient Hotel next to it. And then I put it in for this reason. Look at the parking. Every once in a while, somebody says, I got a new idea. Why don't we? And then you kind of go, no, we already did that. 1935. Yeah, that kind of didn't work either. And this is Monument Square, which is the area, the entrance to Congress Park. Look at the structure that was the Congress Spring. You've got Convention Hall, which is just up the street. Visitor Center would be over here. Congress Street would come in here. And then you've got the 77th Memorial in the middle of the square. And that was big bulbous. It grows. Take a look as you drive through there. It bulges out. That was done on purpose to accommodate the War Memorial. In the early days of automobiles, somebody was ejected from a car and head injuries at the base of the statue forced everybody to rethink it. They moved the memorial into the park. So that's why it's in the park today. But all dressed up for conventions. We were having conventions 100, 150 years ago, just like we're doing today. And then there's this picture. And the timing is not too bad here. I like this picture because it's got a really busy summer. And I've been here my whole life, and people will say to us, you know, Saratoga looks so much better now. It's, when you lived here, when you grew up, it was a dump, and a few other things that get said to me like that. Which I say, thank you very much for playing, and let me just gouge your eyes out. But basically, when I look at a picture like this, what I kind of like to think about is when I was growing up here, there was a different pace, and I think this reflects the pace of America. It's not just the pace of Saratoga, it's the pace of America. It's where America is slower. And when you think about what it was like here with the horse-drawn carriages and people strolled. They didn't walk with purpose. They strolled. And Monty Woolley, I don't know if you ever thought, Monty Woolley came out of Saratoga. His father was one of the last proprietors of the Grand Union Hotel. And when Monty Woolley was a young boy, he was allowed the last day that the hotel was open to direct the orchestra as a little kid. Of course, he went on and was a great actor and all those kind of good things. But he delivered a eulogy once, and I'll just tell you this. And I always like this. In the eulogy for his friend, he was talking about having them grown up in the old days at Saratoga. He said, there was in those days a wonderful slow tempo of life. Even the weather was warmer. God, what a lovely time it was to live. And that's the way I feel in terms of, as I look at these old pictures, that it's not all about the development and how high the condos can be and what the prices are and everything else, but it's a reflection of what it was. And I think tempo is the biggest. And if you've been involved with what's going on this summer, you're probably sick of the tempo that most of us are. So, thank you very much. Thanks for the rest of the night.